YouTube channels. So ladies and gentlemen, our fourth and final panel of the day will begin momentarily. And we have the pleasure to introduce our chair of this session. And is Professor Gervan Fearon. Is Professor here by chance? The professor is the president of George Brown College. Mr. Fearon, if you are nearby, I will pass it off to you. Oh, here he comes. As he approaches, I'll read his bio. So, my apologies, Gervan Fearon became president of George Brown College in August of 2021. His career also included serving as the executive assistant to the Deputy Minister of the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, and a senior analyst at the Treasury Board for the Ontario Ministry of Finance. I could read on, but without further ado, if you could please join the stage. It's a very accomplished gentleman joining us, and he will be moderating the fourth panel, which is Creating Wealth Through the BIPOC Business Ecosystem for the National Economy.
That you've had a meaningful day already. Any moment that I can be in the same audience or amongst the amazing colleagues that are here, Jean Augustine, that I can say that I follow in more ways than one, since she's so much a trailblazer for all of us here in Canada and at one level, at a global level. But I also have looked at the other panelists and the list of individuals who've been here today, and just like to really commend you in putting together such an amazing team of individuals. So I'm really pleased to be able to join you here. As was made mention, I'm president of George Brown College, and my bio will show also served as president of Brock University and Brandon University, amongst other items. And as a result, then a number of individuals here on Dr. Wendy Soutier and I have had a long working rapport. So again, just recognizing some of the wonderful people that are all here today. As part of today's session, and it's just been made mention that this is the fourth panel discussion, I'd just like to really bring our point of focus on what the purpose of Friends of Africa conference and summits have been over the last number of years. And it really is to facilitate wealth creation ideas for the development of Africa and its economies, as well as the recognition of the diaspora and diaspora business. And in that context, the fourth session really focuses on creating wealth through the BIPOC business ecosystem for the national economy. Maybe I should even say economies. Associated with this, there'll be four panelists, and as well including myself as the moderator. And what I'd like to do is at this point, see if everybody's here, maybe call them up individually as well. So firstly, I'd just like to call up Tiffany Callender, and who is president of FACE Coalition, please. Just as in a moment as I turn to each of the panelists, I'll ask them each to maybe introduce themselves a little bit. Next, I'd also like to be able to call up Cassandra Dorrington, and thank you for joining us, Cassandra. So President and CEO
and rather than try to say it as an acronym, I'll just say the letters associated. So CAMSCE. And in just a moment, as you introduce yourself each, then there's an opportunity to maybe elaborate on your context and as well as some points towards the topic. What I'd like to do is just to spend a moment in level setting us all as we think through this topic that will be discussed by our panelists, and a number of points to be recognized. I think it's important for us just to recognize on the scale of the continent and the countries associated. 1.4 billion people, average age of just around 20, economic activity in terms of GDP just under $3 trillion, a number of countries growing at 4% a year in that regard. So if you think of doubling time dividing by 70, you can see that you have a number of countries and that will be doubling in terms of economic activities over the next 10 to 20 years as well. It should also be recognized in terms of the diaspora that in the Americas, about 200 million individuals of African descent are here in the Americas. In Canada itself, 1.2 million plus. And interestingly enough, about 600,000 or half of that population are individuals who've migrated to Canada as part of this generation. 50% of that 600,000 come directly from the continent of Africa as well. I think it's also important for us just to level set again on a number of items, drivers of economic growth in Africa. I'll just point to 4 very quickly and give a couple of examples. Technology, fintech. I can remember being in Kenya, almost 15 years ago, and the fintech technology and industry that was happening in Kenya and the general region, even in Nigeria at the time as well, was leading what we had here in Canada and in North America. Telecommunications, we know the idea of what's happening with satellite, microsatellite technology, and what's that done to the getting in place the kind of technologies in terms of telecommunication possibilities. Energy, not only in terms of oil production, but also in terms of green energy production that's taking place across the continent. Another significant driver, along with the incredible scope for exporting energy globally, and that even being clean energy at that. Educational attainment. What's interesting when you take a look at the demographics, 15% with post-secondary education, when you think of that number, it might understate the implications of that. In terms of the African continent, 587 million, and that 15% translates into 210 million individuals with post-secondary or university or college education. It's not too long ago, if you take a look at Canadian statistics over the last 20 years or so, that Canada 20, 30 years ago was in the same point. So what can happen in terms of economic growth and educational growth over the next 10 to 20 years can be quite significant. And it also represents a significant market, both internally as well as opportunities for engagement. Demographics is also really interesting. Relatively young population is made mention, about average age of 19.7. But that also translates into what's often called a dependency ratio. Those individuals under 14, those individuals over 65 as a percentage of the total population. Well, currently, 2021, that number stood at about 78%. Canada currently stands at about 64%. Well, Canada, that number over the next several years by 2056, that number will be at 84%. What that means is that the African continent has this incredible driver of capacity, both with education technology and energy, to really see that 5% growth spur at a significant level. So what does that mean to our topic? And our topic being, as made mention before, the idea of creating wealth through the BIPOC business ecosystem to be able to support national economy. I introduce our 3 panelists, and each of them then will be able to take that context
of the incredible potential and current growth happening in Africa, as well as recognizing the diaspora population, both across the Americas, but at a global level, and put meaning to it on this topic. So why don't we hear from them? We'll then have a little bit of discussion as well, and then we'll hear from you through your questions as well. So with that, as I call the panelists, I'll maybe start in order and turn to them as I take a seat and ask them to introduce themselves and maybe to give a few comments to start us off on the topic, and then we can get into a fulsome discussion. I'll be following the leadership that the Honorable Jean Augustine presented, meaning each of the panelists being able to make some remarks. I'll try to spur on some of the discussion, and then we'll hear from you through the questions as well. So with that, why don't I turn to our first panelist as well? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. First, I'd like to thank the CASA Foundation for inviting me to participate at Friends of Africa. Thank you, Dr. Gervan. My name is Tiffany Callender, and I am the co-founder and CEO of the Federation of African Canadian Economics, which is a historic organization that now manages Canada's first Black Entrepreneurship Loan Fund underneath the Black Entrepreneurship Program. Our organization started in 2020 during the pandemic, and I think sometimes we say that pressure is what creates diamonds, but I really think pressure is what creates opportunity. And in the case of our organization, which is a coalition, we call ourselves Face Coalition, it was bringing together Black leadership from different parts of the country that worked in terms of supporting Black entrepreneurs over the years to develop a model to allow for there to be support around financial access and also non-financial capacity building for Black businesses to start, grow, and scale their businesses. To date, which is a short period of time in existence, but as the CEO, we've been glad to see in terms of our organization, our partner and founding organizations, with our board and the support of our wonderful staff and really the community, we've been able to approve $26.4 million to Black businesses across the country, which is roughly 254 businesses. So I look forward to this conversation because it's interesting to look at whom are these business owners here in Canada. And what we found is that a lot of the business owners that we've been able to finance, and we'll talk about a little bit about when we say small and medium size, what we're really speaking about in our 1 year at FACE is seeing nano and micro businesses that have been financed, are creating jobs, and that comes from the continent. These are a lot of newly arrived, and I say that between 1 and 5 years, Africans who have joined our Black Canadian community and are making incredible strides in starting their businesses. So the wealth of, and the wealth of transfer of knowledge of skills that it's germinating here in Canada in our Black community is very, very valuable and important. And the model that we've set up at FACE, which really to support Black Canadians and their different Black Canadian experiences around business, is what makes this conversation interesting. And how are we going to really drive through business the opportunity to create employment and support the labor development here in Canada? Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for those remarks, and we'll turn to our next panelist.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. for having us. Thank you, CASA Foundation. I'm very thrilled to be here. My name is Odoi Yemoh. I'm the president of the Ghanaian Canadian Chamber of Commerce, as well as I also teach finance and mathematics at Humber College. I also own my own firm here in the city called Reality Capital Management, where we deal with accounting, bookkeeping, taxation, financial services advisory. I'm very thrilled to be here, like I said. I also act as an external consultant for CASA Foundation. I've been involved in training of CASA Foundation, people that come for training for the CASA Foundation youth programs and all that. Today's topic is very essential, just in the sense that I was listening to the previous panel and they were talking about, especially in Morocco, some of the things that they did there, very amazing. Being the president of the Ghanaian Canadian Chamber of Commerce, we try to sort of look for investors from Canada and connect them to Ghana. Unfortunately, some of the things that we got here as Canadian businesses did not realize the same thing in Ghana, for that matter, where businesses were getting funding from Tiffany's group and things like that. We didn't have that support. And so we're here to sort of collaborate, learn from some of the things that government did in Canada, and how we can advise the government in Ghana so that they can do similar things. So we'll be talking more in the coming soon, but let's proceed and see what we can talk to you about. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next.
Good afternoon. My name's Cassandra Dorrington. I'm the president and CEO of what's called, as Gervan said, that's a long name, Canadian Aboriginal and Minority Supplier Council, otherwise known as CAMC. The topic of the day is really around this whole creation of economic wealth, and that's the reason for the organization of which I'm at the lead. It's important for us to connect what we see as underrepresented businesses into the supply chain of Canada and beyond. Because what happens is businesses have started at a faster rate. When you think about the people that you know, they're not we drop all this to the general society or the corporate environment, and there's no place. And what happens is we create businesses. But then that connection of businesses into corporate Canada, into government, that's what doesn't happen. So we have, as you heard Tiffany, we have a lot of small businesses that are not able, they're the one-person shop are not able to grow. What CAMC's whole purpose is how do we take these underrepresented businesses, how do we get them at the table for their ability to bid on particular opportunities? And actually, once they start to win that, what happens is when I get a job, now I invite other people I employ other people to that table. And what happens is then we now start to have that employment. We start to reinvest in communities. And as a result, we start to build economic wealth in these particular organizations. And so that's what's vital. So this organization that I head, we've been around for 18 years. And one would think you've made tremendous progress. But in the last couple of years, especially when you think of the whole George Floyd, the whole social justice
Is a
movement that's
Canadian
gone on,
not-for-profit
now
founded by
more than
Dr.
ever, it's
Olutuyen
imperative that
Oyelade
government
in
and corporate
2011
Canada and
to
beyond has now
advance
seen the
women,
need
youth, and
to
emerging
invite
leaders
those
through
underrepresented
economic
companies to the
entrepreneurship
table.
and business
They're now
development
creating
initiatives.
opportunities to say,
The
we
foundation
want to
offers
diversify
support
our
to
supply
sectors
chain.
in
How do we get
education,
these
health,
businesses
and
where are they
infrastructure.
at? So without organizations such as Space providing funding, now the
Odoi
education ability to
Oyelade
go
is
from
the founding
having a
partner
vision,
and
how do I
CEO
grow?
at
There's
Invicap
an ability to
Corporation,
actually
an
find
investment
the
advisory
money to be
firm.
able to do that.
He's
And
managed
then the
portfolios
organizations such
worth
as
over
CAMC and
$8
others
billion.
to be able to say, okay,
And in
now I have
2006,
I
she
have
rose
all
to
the
become the
resources.
treasurer at
I want to be able to
Intercontinental Group.
provide product and service.
In
And the
2019,
nice
she
thing
was
about
inducted into the
when we talk
Global
about
Leaders
continent,
Forum.
we now have the ability
She is
to
the
be able to
founder
say,
of
how do we
Afro
get
Investors,
this in
Friends of
trade?
Africa,
So how do we take
EP
these
Academy,
businesses,
and
connect
Tulsa
with the businesses on
Foundation.
the continent, vice versa, and build that wealth across the nation. So I think I'm really excited about the conversation this afternoon because it fits in, the timing's perfect. It fits in with the discussion that's going on in corporate Canada, the discussion that's going on in the government, and it's a perfect time. It's like the perfect storm for all these things to come together.
Great. Thank you for those comments. Well, as we start into this topic, I think that there are a number of different ways of thinking of the topic, particularly around the idea of creating wealth and as well as the idea around the business ecosystem. So why don't we start off by describing, I know that you've each touched on it a little bit. Let's talk about some of the opportunities and let's talk about some of the implications of the opportunities as a starter. And Tiffany, if I could start off with you to be able to kind of describe out what do you see as some of the opportunities and what's the impact, what's the benefit of seizing some of those opportunities?
Well, I think that the biggest opportunity for Black entrepreneurs at this time is that there is a tremendous amount of resources that are available that were not there. I had the opportunity to speak with Senator Don Oliver a few months ago, and he said, this is the third attempt for us to have a federally funded Black entrepreneurship program. And then he said, so, you know, good luck, kid, and make sure you make us proud. And he's absolutely right. We've done through the work of so many, and I'm going to take the moment to talk about Rustum Southwell and BBI, and Cassandra was much involved in supporting that organization. There have been models that have existed in different pockets of the country that have supported entrepreneurship, whether it was accessing capital or developing capacity. What we're seeing now is a broad opportunity for us to create a coalition of resources. And through that opportunity for entrepreneurs, and I want to just quickly talk about high level what we do at FACE and where we fall into the ecosystem. We manage a $160 million fund that is offered nationally. We have a micro lending fund within that offers loans through our partnership with Alterna Savings and with Van City in Ontario and BC respectively. At a larger scale, the Government of Canada contributed to our fund $30 million, which is managed by FACE. This is our portfolio where we lend up to $100,000. Then the BDC comes in with $130 million where we lend up to $250,000. I've been in the entrepreneurial space. I'm from Montreal. and I supported a provincial mandate to help Black entrepreneurs, particularly English-speaking entrepreneurs in Quebec. And there we saw from 2006 to 2014, the barriers that really existed, and that was not unique to Black Quebecers, but we understood that this must be replicating itself somewhere else in the province. So to have a program like FACE, which is not just supporting the financial access, but the fact that the government contributed to ecosystem organizations that would now talk about capacity building. There was 2 panels back. We talked a little bit about what is required to be an entrepreneur, what does it take, and the capacity that's needed in terms of making sure you understand your business, can explain it through the business plan, know your numbers, have professionals support you. And the fact the government invested in that within our community with organizations that have been doing it for a very long time is very important. Last but not least, the data required. I'm sure you like that piece. The data that's required to support the growth that we are having as a community. What is the actual economic imprint and economic footprint that we're making as Black Canadians? Who is Black Business Canada? How many people do they employ? How are their businesses growing? What sectors are they in? I can tell you the last year has been very eye-opening for me as a CEO to really find out and start to unearth just the top layer of what sectors we're in, where we need to be, and what is really the opportunity to contribute to the idea of generational wealth for Black Canadians. I'll stop there because I chat a lot. So I'll stop and hand it over
All
to the
really
panelists.
good and strong points. I'm actually going to go to Cassandra, and almost the same question about what do you see as some of the opportunities, and give a little bit of a case as to if we seize those opportunities, what might be some of the implications.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, Tiffany was very clear on, we need the monies and the wraparound services to grow. But once you have that, or you're ready, when I look at, we've been doing a lot of work with the federal government on social procurement. They've recently announced their social procurement policy, which means they are now going to be looking at those underrepresented, these particular groups, to invite them. And the government of Canada is the biggest procurement agent in the country. So when you think of the opportunities that are there when you're able, they now have opened up their e-procurement and they're asking you to self-identify. We're pushing them and say, we want more than self-identification. We want to be able to, that you know in particular, these are Black-owned businesses that you're inviting in. So therefore, you can actually start to track them where they fall in the system. So the government is now looking at that. We've been talking to PSPC a lot. We also know that corporate Canada has been all over this. So when I talk about corporate Canada, we have things like, when you consider Apple put in about $100 million at least, I think, to try to drive Black businesses. They want to be able to support and grow that. So when they reach out to me, I'm looking for where are those Black businesses that we can connect inside there. So we have people like Apple, we have people like Facebook. I mean, you have the Accentures are doing mentorship programs for Black entrepreneurs. When I look at industry itself, what's coming to the table, Stellantis has recently opened a battery factory or a battery plant in the Windsor. They are wanting to reach out and they are wanting to get Black entrepreneurs, Black business involved. This is a long-term project. So Stellantis is doing with their EVs and the batteries plant. Toyota's also doing it. Ford's also doing it. Where are our Black entrepreneurs? So whether we're looking at sort of the green energy that you heard Gervan talk about, green energy is huge. The government has this whole thing. We want to be green by the 2035. They're pushing all the utility companies. The utility companies are saying, where are these entrepreneurs that we can actually start working with? That is what I'd like to be able to see is there's some very traditional businesses that we tend to set in, but those business skills are transferable into other areas, and that's what we have to start looking at. So whether we're looking at things such as cybersecurity is huge. So when we talk about the IT business, when we get into everybody's now online, cybersecurity is one of the biggest issues going that we have to be able to master. And what are we doing as it relates to that? We heard earlier, food security is up and coming. It's a huge area. What are we doing? What's your business doing as it relates to that? When I think indeed about, I talked about the green energy, we've just gone through the whole COVID scare. The world of pharma, the whole medical world, there are hordes of opportunities that are available. So I'd like for you, as you're thinking about your business, not just think about some of the traditional things that you're doing. How does that transfer into where the needs are, where we're growing as a society? That's what, when the governments are looking and the corporates looking, they're looking for that innovative idea. And some of them don't know what they need right now. They're looking to set with the entrepreneur to help to grow that. So the opportunities that I see are endless. But again, it's tied to, do you have the resources? Do you have the funding? And some of these corporations are actually willing to actually do that support with you. I would also encourage not to forget that there's partnerships available. Partnership and collaborations are huge. You don't have to do this by yourself. When I think about the Indigenous community in Canada, they're looking for partners as well. And the Canadian government has a 5% procurement with Indigenous people. So they're looking to, do I have other resources and other people I can bring resources to the table? So there's no host of opportunities available. It's making sure you're ready to be able to accept those opportunities.
Thank you for those comments. Supplemental.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Cassandra's saying because it is so important. When she speaks about the opportunities and where we need to be in terms of the trends that are coming, I think this is where data is key. So by looking at FACE, where we can say so far, there are about 32 sectors of business. We're active in about 26, but concentrated in 4. And just from that beginning year, we can see, well, yes, those businesses are absolutely important and we're financing because they're growing, but how do we share that data to say now this is where we need to be so that we can be a part of the fueling of the understanding of where we need to position ourselves. So when CAMSI comes into play now, we've got the businesses there that are able to get in and take those advantage. So I just wanted to comment that because it's important. And again, this coalition and working together is really building a model of how we're going to get ahead and grow wealth.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for those comments. Well, Professor Odoi, what I'd just like to be able to maybe turn this a little bit away from is towards the idea of the chamber and the role that Black institutions and institutions associated with African countries, the African community can play in being able to both realize opportunities as well as to address hurdles. So could you speak a little bit about the role played by the Ghanaian Chamber of Commerce and the role played by institutions within the Canadian setting to be able to bridge and to get to see some of the opportunities?
Well, thank you. That's a very great question. I'm going to tackle this question in 3 ways. I'm going to look at education, resources, and connectivity. Reason being that it's all about awareness. A lot of people are not aware of some of these things that are available to us, some of the resources that are available. We heard about FACE Coalition and what they do. A lot of our people applied and some of them did not get favorable resources. Why? Favorable feedback. The reason is because one is education. So, when you apply for grants and things like that, you have to always take a look at a business plan, how it's done. A lot of entrepreneurs within our community lack that. And so one of the areas that we can focus on to help them realize and get access to these opportunities is for us to focus on education, training, trying to get them involved and understanding and just preparing basic business plans for them to be able to understand basic financial statements, things that I believe FACE Coalition will need from them. A lot of our people, are involved in traditional sort of businesses, some of them doing dressmaking, some of them are into, homegrown businesses. So they're starting from home. So they don't have the basic things that they need to show to present. How do you do that? We need to educate them. And that's why they need to belong to a certain group and so on and so forth. So one of the areas that we have seen, that brings me down to connectivity. We need to connect. And so what the chamber does is that we try to identify the resources that are available, such as from FACE, and then try to promote those resources to our group. By doing that, we still need them to be trained. And so that's the area that we need to focus on before you present a simple business plan. I know FACE will be asking for simple data like your name, date of birth, address, and those taxes, previous year's taxes, and all the NOAs and all those good stuff. Yes, but at the end of the day, you still need to tell them what you are doing today as a business, and you need to project it. Now, there are even lots of resources available even in the financial institution, but you still need to present a business plan and be able to say that, look, I'm looking for like 100,000 to invest in my business, and this is how I'm going to pay the 100,000 back. And so the opportunities are there, but for us to realize that opportunity, we need to take into consideration, I believe, three things: education, the resources, identifying where the resources are, what you need to gather to enable that to happen, and also connectivity. We need to connect to each other. You know, if you don't understand certain things, connect to the chamber and then ask those questions. We'll be able to, you know, go forward, ask Tiffany, and she might give us the details, and we're coming back and present that to you. And I believe those are the things that when we do and do properly, will enable the people in our community to thrive and become more business oriented. A lot of people are now talking about entrepreneurship. They are enthusiastic about it. They want to be successful, which is good, but where to start is a problem. And so where to start, I believe, is to take a basic education. And I believe CASA Foundation is even doing that, taking them through a process where you come to the first cohort, you learn a little bit about how to even read a simple financial plan. You don't need to know too much. Just an income statement, understanding what your revenue is, your expenses is, and your net profit is. And if you have taken a loan, how you're going to pay that loan back. You know, it's not just about taking money and investing in your business. How are you going to be able to realize revenue to be able to pay back that loan? And so those are the areas that I believe we need to take a hard look at to enable our businesses to thrive within our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for those remarks. One of the things that have always struck me, and my opportunity to visit both South Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, Nigeria, by way of example, is the absence of Canadian businesses and huge infrastructure growth, huge markets, as made mention, 587 million individuals in urban settings within the continent. You've got an educational population of post-secondary at 210 million, GDP almost at 3 trillion, growing at somewhere between 3 to 7% a year. But then there's an absence of Canadian businesses in Africa. In the context of Friends of Africa, then, and I know that we've talked a lot about business within the Canadian setting. Could you talk, maybe each one of you start off by just looking at the case as to how can Canadian businesses, how can businesses from the diaspora link and be engaged in business activities within the continent and be a part of wealth creation and that growth that by definition may leave us behind here in Canada if we're not a part of that future as well. So why don't we, it seems that you've got a great answer coming, so we'll start with you and then we'll go to our other colleagues.
Thank
as
you.
well.
You can see I'm eager to answer that question. I'm really interested in answering that because that's what our chamber should be doing. I mean, our main mandate is to be able to sell Canadian businesses to Africa and the rest of the world. And so we need to collaborate with the Canada Board of Trade. Number one, we need to collaborate with the Canadian High Commission, of course. But to answer to your question, what the actual issue is there is the same thing: collection of data, which if I'm an investor and I want to invest in Africa, I need to understand the data. Policies is one of the areas that we need to take a look at. The two countries, you need to look at the policies that are in there and see whether the policies even favors the investor going to invest their money there. You know, for us that understand the ground in Africa, we know the bureaucracies and things like that that goes on in Africa. But I can tell you right now that Africa is a place to be because we have a lot of resources readily available. Like the previous, previous presenters said, I think one person mentioned that we don't come to the West to ask for money anymore. We are coming to be in partnership. So I was even walking on the hallway just a few minutes ago, and one person approached me and said that, look, there is a land worth about 8 billion, about 90,000 acres of land available for whoever wants to partner with a particular town in Africa, for that matter in Ghana, for them to, for us to do some similar thing that we are doing. So he was saying that we need to collaborate, work effectively, and even host these Friends of Africa maybe in 5 years' time in Africa, in Ghana. And so that's something that we are looking at. But we need to collaborate properly. We need to convince investors that that's the place to go. How do we do that? Is for us to do more research, come back, and then present what the resources are, how safe it is for you to invest in Africa now. We know there has been issues in the past, but how safe it is for you to invest there. What are the policies that are currently there that the two countries can leverage on to make this a reality? And that's what our chamber is currently focused on. We are making that, we're trying to put that together to be able to present it more effectively. So we are looking at even having this Friends of Africa event in a couple of years in Africa, in Ghana, in a town where we'll all go have an hotel, a multi classic high level park where we have event centers, different residential places, commercial places that we can go and have fun. So we are ready for that. Thank you.
I'm going to almost change my question a little bit after what I just heard, but I think without question, what you've just done is invited us all to that. Okay, so perfect. Okay, so looking forward to it. Why don't I take the same question and maybe just adjust it a little bit for you, Tiffany. And I'm particularly thinking of capital markets in Canada and thinking of the mining industry. The mining industry, the TSX is a major source of capitalization for the mining industry at a global level. And being able to invest in African companies and startups and the likes, the fintech in Kenya by way of example. In that sense, could you maybe do a little bit of a linkage to the role that capital markets can play in being able to, for Canadian companies, Canadian investors, wealth funds, being able to invest in African countries and companies as well? Could you, gaps or possibilities even?
So I'll start with the first thing that I've been playing with and speaking with colleagues, is that the Black Canadian community, and I'm speaking about them from the perspective of investing back in the continent, we are a developing community in a developed country. And that means even when we're speaking about how we understand the bridge to Africa and investments and how we want to be present in terms of investing there, how we engage, we have a lot of work to do. It leads back to education and support in terms of those of us who are in a position to do that, in being able to say we would like to fund back home into countries that we know are ours in the essence of this global Blackness and this being African on this planet. And I think that where we are as a community, as we continue to evolve and educate, we have to think that there's different levels of that. An important piece around capital markets is that there is, somebody said it before, and there's so much money out there. And how do we now harness and ensure that when we are making these investments, we understand the quadruple bottom line? It is really about making growth and impact, being impactful in terms of what it means to be Black on the planet. So again, when I think about FACE, and I think about what we have as a current mandate, which is using entrepreneurship and financing businesses as a subset to ensuring that we move towards economic growth and generational wealth for Black Canadians, it's also this opportunity to educate and to be able to say, let's think a bit broader in terms of what it means to be wealthy where we are, so geopolitically, but also what it means in terms of from a global standpoint, and to take advantage of and to position ourselves to take advantage of the wealth that we want to grow and that we want to be a part of in Africa. So I think that that's one of the things. I'm coming with you to Africa. When you say, I'm scheduled to go in May, God willing, yeah, I'll be in Rwanda. And then I should be in October 2023 in Ghana. So I'm going, but I'll come again when you go, that's for sure. But thank you.
Perfect. As you can tell, a lot of us are coming, so you've got to get ready for us, okay?
We'll be ready for that.
Okay, wonderful. Cassandra, I want to be able to maybe ask the same question, but I think that you alluded to the idea of working with Indigenous communities and Indigenous peoples. And one of the item there is the opportunity for how we partner as a diaspora community, but then how we partner globally as well. So through your experiences, can you speak a little bit to that as well as to how do we build bridges both domestically and internationally through your experiences, through your work at this time?
Okay, perfect. For me, I think a lot of what we're talking about here today is really intentionality. Okay? So as we're talking about whether it's connecting the bridges to Africa, be intentional in which country we're going and what we're trying to do there. Because the whole sort of, buckshot approach does not work, and it works for one. But if we're going to be actually able to do that, so pick a country, pick an industry, and start to do that. My equivalency down there's a council in South Africa, South African Supplier Diversity Council. And so I work with Gary very closely and to be able to say, if Cummins and there's a couple other automotive companies down there, can we bring companies from Canada into the South African market? Can they partner with the South African companies down there, build capacity, and then they can go to other places and grow from that? So we see that whole linkage and collaboration makes sense because we're very intentional and very focused. And as you know, when you build success, success begets success. You're able to share those stories because you have a lot of corporations. Is there enough depth? Are these organizations big enough? Can they deliver? You've just identified the success that you've had by taking these companies down and doing that. As well, with Gary, we've been actually working with a couple of the universities in the US to actually do exactly that, the education you talked about, to grow that model of education. Because what happens is entrepreneurs have a technical skill set, but maybe not that managerial strategic set that you want to bring to the table. And so you want to use that MBA type of approach to help them understand how to drive a business. So I believe that if we're going to pick countries, identify the industry, identify the companies, let's start being very intentional about what we're doing and to drive that. And that doesn't happen in but a day. It takes time and planning to grow that and to reinvest in that. So you've seen over the period of time. When I talk about, if I come home to the Indigenous population, I do think we have not made enough bridges there to actually have that dialogue and connection. We need to actually sit at the table because, again, the Indigenous population, much like ours in some cases, suffers from that lack of capacity building. So everyone's saying the opportunities over here, but do you have the capacity to wrap around resources to do that? So I believe we have some shared gaps, so to speak, that we can actually bridge together. Because I believe that we have in some areas the knowledge they don't have. They have the openings with the opportunities that we don't have. If those two come together, it's like a match made in heaven. And so, but again, what has happened to both the Black population and the Indigenous population is in some cases, we've not been able to lead because others have come in to use our Blackness to gather an opportunity, and we don't get to take advantage of that. And so again, when we talk the Indigenous population, they don't want us just coming in and saying, well, now they have the opportunities, you're just coming to take off. We want to say, how do we work together to grow that? Because we believe the whole of the economy only gets better when we're all included. And what does that look like? So I believe some key dialogue has to go on to build the trust, to build the future. And I believe the time is now because, again, we're all looking for that avenue. The opportunities, the resources are there. The Canadian government's throwing money on the table to say, we want to help do this, but they don't know how to do this. We know how to get the people together. So we need to have those very dialogues, plan what the future looks like.
Wonderful. Well, I know that even though I have challenges in believing in the idea of time, and we can have the discussion about the Big Bang and so on right about now, time is a limiting factor. So what I'd like to be able to do is maybe to have 3 questions from the audience, and that will give us a sense of limiting our time. And if they could be really to the point, intentionality and clear, and then if you could, you want to direct it to the panel as a whole or to a specific person, then that'll be fine. And then we'll have a chance to thank our panel and to close off as well. So let's see, we've got a hand, another hand, and so we've got 2 over here. So we could have the first gentleman at the back there. Do you want to stand first? Yeah, perfect. And then I think a mic is coming to you. And thank you for your question and anticipation.
Thank you. My name is Kojo. I'm from Africa. I'm from Ghana. My Actually, my question goes to Madam. Yeah, I didn't get your name, sorry. Um, I'm working I'm in the fintech industry. And what I'm basically working on is to find the grounds where we can find the kind of platform that in the eventuality that the indigenous, as you said, or let's say Black diaspora, will get some kind of basic funding in terms of getting the Black diaspora to enable the Black diaspora financially to be able to, every Black diaspora to be able to visit and or invest in Africa. Yes? So now with that, what I'm looking at is,
So
If-
remember intentionality, short question.
yes, if there is any facility or if there is any program out there that she can direct me to in terms of government collaboration on
So
that.
I think the question was to Tiffany then.
Yes, to Tiffany.
So if I understand correctly, what you're looking for is a program to help you to have entrepreneurs in diaspora visit and understand what is available in Africa? Anywhere, everywhere, anywhere, ever. Okay, okay. So the first thing is that in my experience, in terms of working with the government, as Cassandra so rightfully said, they want to help, they don't know how. So sometimes there isn't a program that specifically exists, but there's an opportunity. And I think that that's probably where collaboration really comes into play. From our lens at FACE, one of the things that we want to make sure is that when someone is looking to, whether it's a grant, a loan, an opportunity, whatever it is to centralize that at FACE Coalition. There's currently over 27,000 accounts on the FACE platform. And the idea is to turn that viewpoint, which is just to apply for loans, to make that a space where you can get an understanding of what is available to you in terms of programs, whether it's government, whether it's in procurement. So that you'll see come out of FACE soon. That doesn't really answer your question, but I do want to say your intention to do that means that you should probably extend it out to organizations that have the desire to see entrepreneurs visit the continent. One of the organizations, founding organizations at FACE, has taken 3 cohorts of folks, 2 different countries in Africa, entrepreneurs. We can continue to expand that opportunity because I think the experience of being in the continent will inform how we build those bridges and how we are able to work together on different, and what I want to say, last piece, because Sam's got her mic up, is knowledge transfer. Building FACE has been, so far, the best professional experience I've had, but it is really the idea of taking that model and adapting it to different Black countries. Are we the lab for what it could look like for any Black community in the diaspora to go to their government, to go to financial institutions, to go to their institutions, to go to organizations, to say, this is a model we can adapt and now create a true federation that looks global for Black people?
Let me just add to what Tiffany said. 2 things that you're looking at. You need to take a trade mission. You need to go someplace. So you're looking for money that helps you go because you're exploring that. The other thing that you need to take a look at is if your business plan, because what you're looking for money is to develop your business plan. So this is not government funding. This could be funding from FACE or whatever. You're looking to develop that plan you have around fintech. Yeah, so that's why you need to be able to apply to be able to get money to help you do. And then you have to take that and participate in a trade mission into a particular area. Because again, as we've said before, intentionality, you're not trying to go all over. You're going to try to build one foot in front of the other. Pick one area. You're going there to explore. Is there a sort of a linkage to what you're trying to do? And then you're trying to actually take that and blow it up a little bit because you're building this so what the business is going to look like. So one step in front of the other.
Thank you for that question. Should just make mention, the Canadian government had announced the idea of having students do international experience as well. That was curtailed because of COVID. But there are also those kinds of opportunities of working with post-secondary education institutions to build those locations for students and professors and the likes to be able to do those kinds of ideas that you just made mention. So timely comment in that sense. I've had a question over here, and then we've got a question up here as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Napoleon. And first of all, I appreciate everyone here because I've been in Canada now close to 15 years. But at this point in time, I can say Canada is saturated with opportunities for Black people. And for the first time, there's no more barriers, Anglophone, Francophone, Caribbean, etc. And thanks to the work that CAMC, Face Coalition, CASA, everybody is doing here, and I appreciate you guys for that. My question, since we're talking about Friends of Africa, first of all, I work in an organization here, which is part of the Black entrepreneurship ecosystem, BIPOC Foundation based in Alberta. And since we're talking about Friends of Africa, Tiffany mentioned something that some of the loans that she gave out were Bright Minds, businesses owned by people from the continent. Okay, and everybody wants to go to Africa. But my question is, there's about 195 countries in the world, 54 African, 13 are sovereign nation for Caribbean. But if you look at the World Bank Index for ease of doing business, the first 100, the countries you see there is Rwanda, Morocco, South Africa, but where are the rest of the countries? So my question is, we in the diaspora, we have a very strong diaspora economy. What can we do to enable ease of doing business back in the continent, including the Caribbean, even better to attract more businesses? Thanks.
Okay, we've got a taker on that question. Go for it.
Well, that's a very good question. And actually, that's a space that we are actually researching and looking at, because what he's saying is very, very crucial. What we seem to be saying, even for example, in Ghana, we use the term that Ghana is a gateway to Africa. I've always said that it's truly the gateway because people pass through that gate and go somewhere else in Africa. You know what I'm saying? So if we're saying it's a gateway to Africa, we want the people to come and then stay there. And so some of the things that we need to do is to create awareness. And so for instance, for the first question that was asked, you know, if you want the Canadian government to invest in resources through federation like Face Coalition to be able to help Black Africans to become financially sound, I believe that's the main mandate. For them to do that, you need to be more, your business plan has to show that, right? Because Export Development Canada, for example, would like to encourage these Canadian businesses to thrive in Africa, but there's always return on investments. What are the return on investment for the Canadian government? So to answer to your question, what are we as Africans here, since we're talking about Friends of Africa, doing for investors to be able to say, okay, I'm locating this country in Africa, I want to be there and do business. Of course, if I'm an investor from here, I still want to get some return on my investment. So to add to that, all I wanted to say is that you need to identify in your business plan what are the advantages or benefits to the investor as well, so that investor will know that if I go to this particular country, I'm going to make so and so money there. For example, in Ghana, we have much vested in mining. We have a lot of gold, as everybody knows. We have a lot of oil and so on and so forth. So if I have identified that, put that on a business plan, and I'm able to present to an investor, the investor will be willing to do that. So what we need to do here is for us to do more research to be able to showcase on networking platforms similar to what we are doing here today, to showcase and say that, okay, if you go to Morocco, this is what Morocco is vested in. If you invest your money in this sector, you're going to be okay. And we always say that we need to look at the low-hanging fruits, the ones that you can just quickly go in and execute. For instance, in Ghana, we are talking now about Destination Ghana. In December, everybody would like to go and visit Ghana. And so some of the low-hanging fruits that we have there currently is for people to invest in the hospitality industry. And therefore, if you want to be a transportation company,
I'm going to be thanking you in a minute.
Then you come, we partner with the government. You come through our chamber, we'll guide you to the right contacts. A lot of the time, people come and say that I invested my money in Ghana and it's gone.
And
I don't have the
I'm
right
thanking
contacts.
you. And
Yes.
I'm thanking you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Just noting we've got one last question coming, and thank you so much.
Thanks. I didn't have a question. I just wanted to respond to the man who asked about funding from the Canadian government. Google can export, CAN export. It's a program through the trade commissioners, and they will provide $10,000 to $50,000, up to 50% of the cost, to take a small medium enterprise to explore market opportunities. So there are programs, but you have to fit the criteria. And the There's a guide that we developed with the Black Business Professional Association that lists some, maybe not all, the resources that are available. So CAN Export is the program you're looking for if you're based here.
Thank you for that. And I think this is a wonderful segue to being able to have exactly the language that is the spirit of the summit, Friends of Africa, and the exchange of ideas that we have by individuals coming to this amazing summit year in, year out. And I'd just like to congratulate the organizers for creating this forum and this opportunity for us all. With that, though, it is also an opportunity to thank our panelists for their contributions, their ideas, and their expertise that they've shared with us. I'd like to start off maybe in reverse order this time, though, is start off by thanking Cassandra for her expertise and the ideas that she shared. I think we're left with the clarity of intentionality and doing the homework and building the bridges. I'd like to thank our professor as well for his idea. I noted that he celebrated the idea that we will be all going within 5 years. And he also suggested that Ghana is the gateway. I can tell you, that's exactly my point. I remember being in Nigeria, being in Kenya, being in Tanzania, being in South Africa. I won't go on, but I simply will say I think the continent is the gateway to an amazing opportunity and experience. Next, I'd like to thank Tiffany for both the work that she's done in terms of supporting amazing business startups and ongoing enterprises as well, and for her expertise that she brought to the table. So to you, this is an opportunity to say thank you to the panelists, and our time is now up and we'll be doing a transition. So might you take the moment just to say thank you to the panelists for all their ideas and points. Thank you.